I am making this statement today on behalf of She Leads youth advocates working across the African region. Climate change is one of the greatest global, intergenerational, gender, and social injustice of our time. Its consequences affect the rights of the most marginalized, magnifying gender inequalities and exacerbating inequitable social conditions. When we talk about climate change, the picture that easily comes to mind is that of melting icebergs, intense heat waves, and extreme weather patterns. Unfortunately, when the face of climate change is a melting iceberg in the North Pole, it is easy to forget the devastating impact of climate change on the reality of girls and women in the African continent. In my experience and the experience of my peers, climate change is challenging the livelihoods of the poor throughout Africa. In my country, Kenya, pastoralist communities grapple with uncertain weather patterns, food insecurity, and water scarcity. For those living in the city, water scarcity and unbearable heat waves are the order of the day. Yet people tend to see a very remote connection between what is happening to the environment and anthropogenic activities. Moreover, people do not see how the devastating impacts of climate change relate to the sad reality of women and girls in Kenya. Girls are left to suffer the strongest consequences for a problem that they have not created. Because of entrenched social and gender norms, climate related disasters routinely place adolescent girls and young women at increased risk of human trafficking, sexual and gender based violence, and disruption in access to sexual and reproductive health services. These disasters continue to increase harmful practices such as child, early, and forced marriage and unions due to the growing impoverishment of communities, all of which can direct adolescent girls into a vicious cycle of intergenerational poverty, vulnerability, and further marginalization. In spite of this, girls and young women are not prioritized in climate responses, policies, and strategies. Education, healthcare, particularly SRHR and GBV responses, are critical to addressing the needs and rights of young girls and young women in their diversities. Adolescent girls risk being pulled out of school to help alleviate the additional domestic and economic burdens that are shouldered by women in households that are affected by climate related shocks and stress. If current trends continue, by 2025, climate change will be a contributing factor in preventing at least 12.5 million girls each year from completing their education. Disruption of health services during climate related and other disasters increases the chances of unplanned pregnancies and sexual and reproductive health complications. Moreover, health services, including sexual and reproductive health services in crisis settings, often fail to reach the most vulnerable groups. To be effective, climate justice and responses must prioritize education, the meaningful involvement of girls and young women, and a commitment to investing resources, technical, financial, and human. In particular, discussions on policies made for girls must involve girls and try to put the needs of girls in the front because of their vulnerability and so as not to necessarily limit them. Meaningful engagement of girls and young women from diverse backgrounds and with different lived experiences in discussion on climate change at all levels and all stages is needed to build equitable, sustainable, and climate resilient societies. Participation is our right, and we are here to demand a seat at the table. We want to see girls and young women participation written into climate strategies as a requirement and not just a nice to have. It is also vital that this is not limited to those girls who are just easy to reach. Governments should commit to actively and meaningfully involve girls and young women of diverse backgrounds in discussions on climate change at all stages and levels so that they can contribute to transformative change. This will not happen without proper investment of financial, technical, and human resources to carry forward the work. Governments must make and then meet commitments to ensure sufficient budgets to carry forward the work. Where this agenda is under resourced, we often see that our priority agendas fall by the roadside. Investment should cover research and education so that solutions are evidence based. It is also important to invest in climate change mitigation and adaptation based on agenda analysis as well as response. With this in mind, these are our 5 recommendations to member states. 1. States must recognize the disproportionate impact of climate crisis on girls' rights and include girls and young women in the design, implementation, and monitoring of climate action. 2. States must prioritize and invest in inclusive disaster risk reduction and climate policies and programs that recognize the different needs of adolescent girls in all their diversity. 3. States must prioritize and invest in gender transformative education that advances climate justice, DRR, girls' leadership, and engagement in the green economy. 4. States must prioritize meaningful engagement in climate, DRR, and environmental policies and strategies. 5. States must raise ambition on gender transformative climate financing. Thank you.